B. Dolan is a veteran American rapper, spoken word artist, activist, and screenwriter based right here in Providence. He emerged from the early 2000s NYC slam poetry scene and quickly established himself as a fierce, independent voice in alternative and political hip-hop, eventually signing with Sage Francis's Providence-based indie label, Strange Famous Records. But beyond that, and his extensive discography, he is well-known and well-recognized for his hands-on grassroots political activism and investigative consumer advocacy. What's up, man? Thanks for coming back to the show. Appreciate it.
Chilling. Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
All right. It has. And look, a lot has changed, honestly, since the last time we spoke. And you've been doing a lot of great work on the ground. I don't even know where to begin because it all encompasses such an important mosaic. Tell us about the work from your standpoint, what you've been up to.
Well, I think since we spoke last, I had an emergency surgery on my spine during the pandemic, which kind of effectively ended my touring career. I did some touring afterwards, but immediately realized it wasn't in my best interest to keep trying to live on the road. So I transitioned a lot to working out of this home studio, started my own label to house my own catalog, which is Glaring Typo Records. And through crowdsourcing, Patreon, weekly Twitch streams, just kind of figuring out how to exist in the digital world, have managed to keep myself going as an independent artist somehow. And at the same time, I'm trying to change my activity of how I perform and how I interact. So, touring for a lot of years, I'd always check in with local activist groups, and sometimes we'd release singles and direct funds to a group. But being here and really rooted here over time gave me an opportunity, I realized, to actually embed myself with an organization, which I did with the Amor network. And that started, I guess, over a year ago. At first working on the defense line, going down to the courthouses when people were spotting ICE, and doing the work there with volunteers. And a couple organizations, PSL has been doing that as well. And then from there, got introduced to Amor, got turned into part of their legislative team, became a lobbyist. I've been learning the ropes locally.
Yeah, and so for anybody who doesn't know Amor, that's the Alliance to Mobilize Our Resistance, and it's in your vocabulary if you pay attention to Rhode Island politics on any real deep level. But I don't think a lot of people know the background there or even the coalition structure behind it. So your involvement there is both on the grounds work, but also it ends up being a vehicle for getting people more and more informed about the work that's happening with Amor or PSL or any of these organizations. How do you look at your role? Is it more like, hey, I would be doing this no matter what line of work I was in, or is your role as somebody with an audience, does that change how you approach activism?
On the one hand, I would be doing it no matter what type of work I was in. On the other hand, I'm increasingly aware of artists as workers who are in as much trouble as workers are everywhere. We could get into a whole discussion about AI, streaming payouts, and live music venues, and the difficulties of artists, even music artists like myself, have as workers, and the need to organize with other workers. But yeah, and then as I started to do the work and just show up to meetings and show up at the State House, I kind of realized that the B. Dolan stuff, my name is Bernard, by the way, I introduced myself as Bernard. The fact that I've created this B. Dolan brand and been, not to think of it as a brand, but, I've been performing for a long time, and so I've bumped into reps and senators who know my music and have been able to establish relationships that way. So it's like, oh, I maybe can be useful in that way, or, I never anticipated the B. Dolan thing being useful in that way, but it turns out it is a bit.
Yeah, it turns out it's a super essential component, I think, of getting the word out organically right now in a moment where everything is just by design so distorted across. And we'll get to, now that you mentioned, I definitely want to get to the AI/reality of the world crisis that faces art. But I'm just curious, in terms of the work that you've done on the ground, what have you seen that, in that sense of what's not being reported by mainstream, or even sometimes the limitations are a reason why, but independent media doesn't get to everything as well. What are you seeing that people in this community should know?
Well, I've been following the ICE bills really closely. So we, like I said, I started working with the ICE Watch WhatsApp group that anybody can get their phone number, get on, and you'll get alerts when ICE is in the community anywhere in Rhode Island. We respond there, go pass out flyers, go monitor what's going on, and go let people know that ICE is in their neighborhood or around the courthouse that day. And then from there, I watched a presentation about the Wyatt and got caught up to date with the Wyatt Detention Center, which is the priority of the Amore network, is getting ICE out of the Wyatt and ending the ICE contract with the Wyatt, as it's the only place in Rhode Island that ICE is detaining people. So, yeah, from there, sorry, I got lost now.
No, well, honestly, I mean, but even stop me right there for just a second. The Wyatt is such a disgrace on so many levels. Yeah. Fundamentally, as just the notion of the private prison infrastructure, super sector, whatever, is just in and of itself disgusting. And look, Central Falls, the argument is they were faced with, you can either have an incinerator or you can have a private prison. Pick one, and they chose the prison.
90s. That's the 90s imagination, right?
A 90s imagination, utter nonsense.
Yeah.
And so now we face a moment where the fundamental groundwork is that this is outrageous. The existence of this prison here, period. All right.
Yeah.
Now the ICE contract. What specifically, what kind of relationship does ICE have right now with the Wyatt? How many people roughly are being brought in or out of that facility that are directly in ICE custody, generally?
So the Wyatt has about 100, maybe I remember the figure 111 beds that are currently being used by ICE as a result of this contract that the Wyatt made with ICE. And the Wyatt, in terms of how it's governed, is confusing on purpose. It's referred to as a quasi-public or quasi-private because it technically has this board that was created. But the shareholders are who really owns the prison, and the shareholders are like the worst of the worst. It's BlackRock, Invesco, they're trillion-dollar hedge funds. They're the same hedge funds that invest in Core Civic and Geo Group, which are the other big private prison companies that are building detention centers in the U.S. So it's the same money. But in the 90s, they did create this like oversight thing, this ability of Central Falls, hypothetically, to manage the prison. But the prison manager just reports to them, and they run the prison how they run the prison. And when a prisoner died in ICE custody in 2008, there was huge protests. ICE withdrew stopped housing prisoners there after that happened. Then a second contract was opened in 2019 when Trump got in. So ICE started using the beds again. At that point, the oversight board, the quasi-public oversight board, tried to say, we don't want ICE here. At that point, the private shareholders sued the oversight board so that these people were now personally in danger of like losing their houses and stuff. So created this lawsuit, which created a situation where a number of people resigned from that board. Anybody else who remains in the city of Central Falls, because of that ongoing lawsuit, can't speak about the prison. And so we're in this situation where the Amore Network for 13 years has been documenting the prison and providing oversight of the prison when there is no federal ICE oversight. There's a lack of state oversight as well.
Yeah. And let's not forget the prison itself. And I mean, it's always fair to say that things have been updated and protocol has changed, but the facility was responsible for the death of Jason Ng in the 2000s. I don't remember the year, but
2008.
Yeah. And he overstayed his visa and was dying of liver cancer and was left to die in that facility. So anybody, I think that's why this is such an important message. We're talking about private prisons here, contracting with a variety of different law enforcement agencies, and there's a total breakdown of oversight that allows for Mr. Ng's death, and then the type of, even just some of the anecdotes or proven actions that have taken place inside that facility.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation.
and it's a financial failure, and it hasn't paid the city back what it was supposed to. It was built with 100 million in bonds from the city. The payments it's made back have never equaled that. And they stopped making payments for about a decade. They just restarted this year as a result, or not, we can't say directly as a result, but the timing is suspicious. That the city just got a payment all of a sudden from the prison, but that's the first time in years. It's never, the story was in the 90s, this is going to make Central Falls $1 million a year. That never happened. And like other private, endeavors, the costs got slashed. And yeah, medical neglect is a constant complaint. Amor just last year, I think, filed, I believe, 600 Freedom of Information Act requests to try and get information from the prison. There's many reports of undrinkable water inside that gives people like E. coli type symptoms. At one point, 13 prisoners got together to write a letter to Amor talking about undrinkable water and how they were melting ice to see if that was drinkable, and it wasn't. So they got to buy bottled water at $2 a bottle. So the prison is they're overcharging for phone calls. They're a profit-making endeavor still, and that makes things more dangerous for prisoners and guards. Even correctional officers' unions in many other states have opposed private prisons. Private prisons are a failed idea.
Yeah. And there are other states where legislation on the state level has prohibited contracting between ICE and private prisons within that state. That, I assume, is the fundamental tenet of the legislation that you're supporting. I believe that's Acosta's one of the names, and I can't remember who else, but
Geraldo
is that correct?
House.
Yes, exactly. Geraldo in the House. Basically, that's the idea. Let's get legislation that would prohibit any private prison from contracting with ICE. That's the next step forward in this project.
Right. Our state property is not going to be used by any federal agency trying to conduct immigration enforcement. And people have had concerns about this idea of the supremacy clause and states not being able to tell the federal government what to do, for example, or how to run their agency. This is not that. This is just withdrawing the use of the public property from the federal government.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? At URI Online, we offer business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, our online programs provide the flexibility you need with a high-quality education you deserve. Learn from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Newport Film. Visit newportfilm.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by Waterfire Providence. Visit waterfire.org. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.
What other areas right now, when you look at on a community level, are you seeing that are not getting the attention that they should? I mean, we could, again, do you have 7 hours? But like people thinking about Trump and Hegseth, or thinking about Israel, or thinking whatever the situation is right now, or even thinking here about on a local level, rent stabilization in Providence or the Washington Bridge or whatever the case is. But the truth is, you just described something right there that is humongous in scope, yet is just one morsel of discussion and broader conversation of the pillars that actually matter on the ground.
Yeah.
What else? What should people be talking about right now that they're not? What should journalists be covering that they're not?
Well, there's a package of ICE bills before moving off ICE completely. There's a package of ICE bills endorsed by the Riblia Caucus. There's 7 other bills that also would do a lot to make it more difficult for ICE to kidnap Rhode Islanders, operate in this state, would keep them away from our courthouses. The virtual courts one is really important, I think, because I really think we're right on the brink of something real bad happening outside of one of our courthouses as a result of ICE's presence there. I've been there a lot, and I've seen defense line workers really trying to keep people safe, but it's becoming a more and more chaotic situation. I watched somebody who now impersonates ICE and just drives around the block panicking people and agitating people. So it's a circus down there. If you're a lawyer or a judge, I don't know how you're not lobbying for that one to pass immediately.
Yeah. And to that point, I'll say this, that's an interesting thing. We do hear from an oversized population of attorneys on WPRO in the afternoon. A lot of these people don't go on the air, but if we're talking about something like this, they'll be like, yeah, I'm an attorney in X, even if they don't practice at that courthouse. Just the absurdity of what this is doing on a practical basis to the legal system. I think that's an argument that should be made more and more and more, that appeals to even people who are maybe in favor of what ICE is actually doing. Start with the idea that this is the stupidest thing this is such a stupid and ugly and vicious and ridiculous mockery of the tenets of the system. And it's just aggravating people in a way that is just completely absurd and obviously dehumanizing.
And it's a public safety threat. Even if you don't care about any of the morals and you're not on the same side as us, somebody's going to get hurt. I'm telling you. And it's not guaranteed to be somebody who's not on your side or you. It's just you can't have mass people kidnapping people in modern day America.
Come on.
But and in general, I think having talked to a whole bunch of lawmakers since January, I see trends in the issues going on in the state as they relate to the suburbs. And I think when I look at Rhode Island and see that it's a Democratic supermajority, where it took like 10 years to pass an assault weapons ban, things that are kind of taken for granted as just bread and butter, like centrist liberal ideas in other places, and not to get into a conversation about assault weapons ban as an issue, but as to make a point, like Rhode Island Democrat does not necessarily equal to me like invested in people's liberation and fighting fascism. Those two things don't necessarily go together in my mind. And there are some lawmakers who have a D next to their name, but could very easily move big, important bills that would protect thousands of people, that would protect working class people. And instead, we see the results. And I think personally, for me, it's about making them famous. Let's all know their names. Let's all identify the cities they come from, where their districts are. And let's start going to those districts, because I find that the people in Pawtucket, Central Falls, Providence, vote how you would want them to vote if you are a progressive or a leftist person. And they elect people who go to the State House and try to do good work there, and they put good bills in. And then I think we have some folks in other towns like Johnston, Coventry, Warwick, Cranston, who maybe don't do politics, or maybe are not as engaged or paying as much attention, or just are not as connected to the activist base. And I don't mean to slander those places, because I've been phone banking in Warwick, and I've been calling people with Italian last names in Warwick. I grew up in Rhode Island too. Like, I get it. I'm Italian American. And I've been hearing people say, oh, ICE is here in Rhode Island? Oh, I've been sending money to Minnesota. Oh, there's an organization here I can get involved in? Like, there's good people in those towns who, if they were aware of what their representatives are and aren't doing, they would become active. So for me, I think the year ahead is going to be about addressing the suburbs and addressing some very particular lawmakers who, for whatever reason, seem a little too slow on some very important issues.
Yeah. And it's that Y10 thing or whatever that the Democrat Party is that in some ways they say this is the best thing that's ever happened. Look, this is actually why I'm in favor of a stronger Republican Party in Rhode Island, because the Republican Party in Rhode Island is a complete joke. There's like, I mean, it's like a sad thing to see. They have missed every opportunity. Like, how are they not doing press conferences on the Washington Bridge every week or whatever?
True.
Like basic
Yeah.
issues. They have no ability to operate as an opposition party or put forward any ideas into the conversation that are reasonable, save for the Inspector General idea, which in and of itself is the way it's framed right now, complete joke. But this is the thing. We've got now this Rhode Island League of Businesses. I had one of these guys on Lively Experiment. He wouldn't answer if Biden won the presidency. He's all over the place. Rank amateur. Now they're calling up the radio. They get themselves in even deeper trouble. Sound like a bunch of people who have no idea what they're talking about because they don't. But the thing that scared me, why this moves me, and after that episode of television I did there, I'm thinking like, all right, maybe like my parents. They don't live around anymore. But like Democrats, my mom's a teacher, my dad was a maintenance guy, whatever. They know, they could tell you who the governor is, probably lieutenant governors, but they don't follow bills. One of these guys knocks on their door from the League of Businesses and pulls some stunt and says, oh yeah, your person is like in favor of open borders. They want to, whatever, pick an issue and take it to a caricature level. But I'm a Democrat and I just want to be good for business. We need more business. And I believe in all the Democratic values. Yeah, the same thing you probably voted for your whole life. Yeah, I'm about that. But just let's bring it back towards a more favorable. Lying, garbage, thieves, fraudulent, cheating, grifters, scumbag moves, grifters.
Yep.
And so that's what happens when you don't have a real Republican Party. You can't have an honest conversation about, okay, we're that, and over here is the alternative. So you're right. That work of awakening the suburbs to the reality of who they voted for. I don't know if it moves the electorate, but it definitely makes people know a lot more about what's happening.
Yeah. Or we just have to find candidates in these places and like that moves the electorate. But yeah, I agree. I think, unfortunately, like the MAGA thing has just resulted in a lot of working people, unfortunately, having like cult-like allegiance to something that clearly just makes no sense and is going to implode. And but the Republicans and the Democrats both have a problematic history with working people, and so
That's right.
We have a DSA here in Providence that's been putting forward candidates, and I love the fact that they get to go to people who are angry, who may be angry at Democrats, and say like, hey, I'm angry at Democrats too. All right, like let's talk about rent here. What's rent like? Can you afford to pay for things, so I think we've seen those things be transformative in like New York. I think what David Morales is doing is really exciting also. And there's exciting stuff going around. But yeah, reaching out to the suburbs and those places where it's that way on purpose. The suburbs are designed to isolate people, and that whole project of white flight out of cities and the fearful mind state of people with privilege who may be sheltered leads to being ripe for Fox News and right-wing craziness to like drop seeds in their brain, and
or even the local
via
news.
Like small businesses, right? You don't want to pay taxes, right?
Yeah, and I think also local news. I think that's part of the problem as well. I mean, there's a lot of great reporting that happens. When you talk about what Target 12 at WPRI does, perfect example of when you give money to corporate news, invests in like investigative journalism. That's good work they do. But in terms of the day-to-day, do you really need to watch the thing? It's a lot of making you feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? It's not necessarily a bath in good stuff. So it gives a ripe environment for people to be predatorial in the suburbs. You're totally right. I wonder how to parlay this, and I think it's kind of the same conversation, but AI in music right now, and just in general, what are you sensing? What are you seeing from your vantage point?
It's been difficult. It's been difficult even to upload music and get it distributed via the normal distributor now. I've got a extensive back catalog, humble brag, and I moved it from one distributor to another. And some of the artists who featured on older tracks got flagged immediately as like an AI danger. And suddenly the new distributor was coming to me like, oh, you need to get like extensive legal paperwork from all these people. And I'm like, I worked with this person 10 years ago. This person, you know what I mean? But so yeah, that has immediate, I mean, and that's a small thing. The next thing is like, I just saw an announcement that Spotify has announced that anyone with under 10,000 active monthly listeners is, might be classified as AI, or they're giving out verification badge. You got to have over 10,000, which will mean many, many artists with decades of music who may not have hit that threshold will have their music demonetized. So yeah, it's pretty bleak. It's pretty bleak. Post COVID, touring, the touring landscape has become difficult. A lot of mid-level venues kind of got closed down or bought up by Live Nation. So places that used to book bands now have Taylor Swift dance DJ nights and club nights. Right. And that was part of, I did a year of touring afterwards, and just saw some of the deals being offered and was like, good luck to any band trying to start out. Good luck to working class musicians trying to live on the road and spread their music that way, which again forces us back to the internet or some new way. So that's what's interesting to me at the moment is artists, just organizing, figuring out new things. This Porch Fest thing that's happening seems really cool. I mean, yeah. Artists and people who appreciate music and fans organizing outside of the traditional music industry, I think is the answer and what's going to have to happen.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's coming back to community. I think back to like, early Def Jam, early, even some of the Northeast punk or ska or whatever, some emo even.
Yeah,
at one
house
point,
parties.
But the hyper localization of it, where it was like, all right, things are happening in place A. Maybe it's New York, maybe it's New Haven, maybe it's somewhere you've never thought of before. Like, wow, there's an unbelievable XYZ scene in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But that metastasizes and gets its own thing happening. It's almost like an island formula, and it creates its own dynamic. And then somehow, some way, there's a pipeline built between like the other kingdom over here in Philly or the other whatever. And that creates this organic network. It's almost like we want to go back there, back to almost like the Telecommunications Act 1996 destroyed everything. So we have to go think about life before then and what it looked like. Because the Spotify thing, give me a break. I mean, come on. How is anybody actually going to build a career off of that without investing a ton of money in whatever chaotic good or whatever the promo? There's a PR company. This band Geese got blown up for spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, to get their stuff to go viral. It's all bots and everything.
Right.
And we're seeing all the blue dots and these huge tours, post Jelly Roll or whatever it is. Can't sell out.
That's right.
Can't sell 10,000 tickets or whatever because no one cares. It's fake. But on the community level, it's the opposite. It's everything.
Yeah. This rapper La Russell went so wrong so fast, but I was watching his career for years, a couple years before he became like big news and went viral and had a whole thing this year. And it was more of a shame than people realized because the story up to that point had been incredible. He started performing at his mom's house. He started throwing shows in his own backyard, and his mom would make food for everybody, and they would film it and put it on TikTok, and they filmed it well. So they were communicating what they were doing, they're showing, but they were also building something very specific, very regional, and totally outside of. And so he had a Patreon. Shows got bigger and bigger. Now Snoop Dogg's playing at his mom's house, and and through Patreon subscriptions, which I think if you were in at a certain level, you just got a forever ticket to any of his shows anywhere.
Yep.
And the Patreon was up high enough that when it was time to book a club, he would just buy out the club for the night. No promoter, just him and his fans, and they walk in for free. And he says, I'm doing the show at 2 p.m. so that kids and grandmas can be there and go home early. Shit like that. Like, make up your own rules, find a way to get away from all this predatory bullshit in the music industry because it's designed to make you fail. Even if you are at the Grammys accepting the award, you're still might it still might go real bad for you. And we know that because we know the history of music.
Right. It often does. And I think one of the
Yeah.
things that is most impactful right now in music is just that if you are able to find any way to sustain at any level as an artist, that's a huge victory in a way that maybe it hasn't been before. And there's a huge difference between artist and creator or whatever, but like actually making your work, for taking your voice and putting it out there into the world, or your vision, or your whatever your soul has to say. If you're doing that in any kind of regular public facing format, or even behind closed doors, that's like a miracle in a world where Pete Hegseth or whoever's doing push-ups at men's rooms at airports.
Yeah.
That's the reality, where it's a complete. So the opportunity to respond has never been greater, and I think that's the reality.
Yeah, and we are cultural workers, and also shout to PSL, because I've been taking this class with them from the People's Forum called "The Artist Must Take Sides." It's dope. It's available online too, and yeah, thinking of art and culture as being the place that society gets our ideas from, and so like also it's important to remember that like music and art that glamorizes the ruling class stuff, the capitalism, the fascism, the consumption, all that stuff does well. It makes a ton of money still. Like that's billions of dollars, even in visual art. Of if you're with the current market, if you're in the current industry, there's plenty of money, but you have to be a certain type of way, and you have to let a certain type of stuff slide, and you can't speak on a bunch of stuff. And if you want to go the other way, then you're on the side of the people, and you should expect that you're going to have to be interdependent with other workers and people and fans.
Right.
You can't have the same like mentality going on over there, like where you're way up above people and you're the superstar and they're the fans. So yeah, just getting artists to realize that the goal is not a Grammy. That's not really success. That's literally a fake thing. The Oscars were created because set workers were going to unionize. Hollywood executives were like using their set workers to like tile their house and stuff. And there was grumblings on the set, and they were mad. And this is documented that the head of a studio was like, we're going to have an award show. We're going to give them a little gold award, and we're going to make one of them the winner every year. And artists really have this mentality that we, A, need to exist in isolation. B, we can win at our art form. We can be the best. And we're trying to, everyone else is our rival and our competitor. So all that, poisons scenes, poisons that type of stuff. The opposite builds scenes, builds the type of thing that can host a band here, that can bring a band from California here for the first time, stay at somebody's house, and now a band from Rhode Island gets to tour in California if they can get themselves out there. Like that's the DIY, do-it-yourself network. It exists here. It exists in Europe. In Europe, they got a lot of venues that have a place in back where they got bunk beds, so you don't have to buy a hotel that night. For a touring band, that's everything. To cut the hotel budget for a whole tour means a whole different class of band can go on the road.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's completely there, and I think there's so much to learn from DIY music and arts, but especially touring music and community-centric scenes. So much to learn from our own past here in Providence. I'm amazed that it gets taken for granted, branded as the creative capital, and then is not only not protected, but is almost dismissed and then assumed, it'll be there. We'll just throw a festival and everybody will turn up and it'll be amazing and we'll be a marketable entity to the world or something. Yeah. And the reality though is that, like you said, it's physical infrastructure, but it needs nurturing. And some places are great at it. In Europe, parts of the United States, South America, Canada, it's a lot better. For some reason, in this area right now, it's like almost impossible to imagine in the current climate really getting something going in Providence. As much as there are a lot of great things happening in Providence, but really getting that next level thing going. There's so many barriers that are not the artist's fault, and they're also not the fans' fault or the community's fault.
Right.
So organizing is the only way forward.
Organizing, and artists embedded in the organizations. I'm old enough to remember when a whole scene got pushed out of Oneyville, and produced some of the greatest bands that I would travel the world and talk about lightning bolts,
Exactly.
So yeah, and people know the name Providence as a result of bands like that. So yeah, and artists are workers. You know, these same musicians are waiting tables, they have union jobs. So what's good for people will be good for music in Providence and elsewhere.
Bernard B. Dolan, a legend amongst legends. Got to drop the Bernard now. Thanks so much for your time, man.
That's it, yeah.
B. Dolan, total legend. Where can people, what's the best place for people to connect with you? I know Instagram that's where I follow you on a near daily basis.
IamBdolan.com has all the information, and the new album is out on all the DSPs and all that. The Amore Network is who I'm repping right now, and for a long time to come. I'm part of the legislative team, and people can sign up and come to meetings once a week. We're going to the State House. Right now, we need everybody to call Senate President Lawson and House Speaker Blazewski and talk about the ICE bills and talk about the Wyatt bill. Because right now it's really just down to the leadership. We're waiting for the leadership. The judiciary committees have heard it. I sat in the meetings. No big argument. Can't even hear the argument. I've talked to Jessica De La Cruz about it. She's not defending the Wyatt. The Wyatt isn't making anyone money. The Wyatt is bankrupt. So we're looking at possibly ending ICE detention in Rhode Island by passing a bill that no one's really standing in the way of, just waiting for the leadership to answer some phone calls and pay attention.
And we'll definitely follow up with both the president and the speaker on that one as well. Thank you. On Bartholomew Town. B. Dolan, thanks for your time.
Yeah, man. Talk soon. Peace.
Follow me on Instagram @BillBartholomew.